Without any further ado, let me hand over to our moderator for this session, Mr. Peter Schildkraut, partner at the law firm Arnold & Porter, who will be accompanied by Miriam Vogel, the founder and CEO of Equal AI, and also the chair of NIAC that Mike Rounds recognized in his remarks before. And finally, Navrina Singh, founder and CEO of Credo AI. Peter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nico, and thank you very much to the Athens Roundtable and for having us, and the Future Society and Elon Tech for organizing this wonderful conference. We've heard a bunch over the last day and a half, 2 days now, about laws that are being drafted and coming into effect. We also just heard about laws, or were reminded of laws, at least in the United States, that currently are in effect. And I'm well aware that we've got similar laws here in Europe where I am right now. That brings up the question, and also I think a question that will be coming up in the poll that you will, that I hope the audience will be getting, of what is the best reason why a company should have an AI risk management or regulatory compliance program. The options that I think you will be getting are that it offers a competitive advantage in sales, reduces litigation and regulatory enforcement risk, it facilitates corporate governance and managerial oversight. It's the right thing to do. And while I hope the audience is going to be getting this question, I'm going to start this off with Miriam and Navrina, whom I will each invite to provide their top 2 reasons. So Miriam, to you first, please.
And thank you to the Athens Roundtable and the Future Society for hosting this really important global conversation. As we all know, this needs to be a global conversation because AI does not have borders, and the conversation today has been really thought-provoking and important. So thank you for including me. So why do you need to think about the regulations you've been hearing about for the past few hours immediately? Well, first of all, as some have alluded, if you're not thinking about compliance and regulatory standards, you may be in violation of laws already on the books. So in addition to the new laws we were hearing about, the EU AI Act, et cetera, first of all, in GDPR, Article 22 talks about the need to have humans in the loop. The FTC in the US, the Federal Trade Commission, has put us on notice that several laws under their purview will be applicable to your AI systems. The EEOC commissioner, who you just heard from, had a historic joint statement with the Department of Justice, putting us on notice that the Americans with Disability Act and other civil rights laws are applicable to the systems you are probably using in your hiring and HR departments. So if for no better reason, for all the reasons discussed, you want better AI, you want more equitable AI, and you may be in violation. And if that is not enough incentive, you've also heard about the laws coming down the pipeline. They are not far away. And if you wait, it will be too late, no question. As you know, proper AI governance is very complicated, requires extensive thought amongst your leadership, an agreement, a consensus on what your systems are going to look like, what your procedure is going to be, who is involved, who's accountable, and putting thought into each step of the process. That takes time, agreement, alignment, and if you wait, your systems will already be deeply integrated. It'll be too late.
Navrina?
Oh, thank you so much, and I'll echo Miriam's comments. Thank you so much for having me, Peter, and the Athens Roundtable is such a wonderful way to bring together a global audience on this very critical and urgent topic. I think +1 to whatever was said earlier, but I do want to talk a little bit about competitive advantage. So, I'm the founder and CEO of Credo AI. We are working with companies to operationalize a lot of these principles and regulations that are getting discussed yesterday and today here at Athens Roundtable. And we are seeing all the problem sets that's arising on the ground to actually realize these principles and make sure that they meet the objectives that they are being set to do. So when I think about, the core value proposition behind why anyone should care about regulations and responsible AI and AI governance, it's from competitive advantage perspective. Enterprises are going to lead in this age of AI only if they've built trust with their stakeholders. And you can imagine that stakeholder list is not just limited to their customers, their boards, the regulators, but it is actually extending even more critically to the consumers that these enterprises are building applications for. So as we think about, the reality on the ground, you can come up with all the guardrails in place, but if the intentionality is not there, if it is not implemented in a way that is serving the end consumers, it's not going to work. So for us, we see this as a competitive advantage, not only in building that trust with customers, in ensuring that you have, employee loyalty, in ensuring that you are a brand that can be trusted in this very noisy ecosystem where everyone is starting to use more and more machine learning and advanced technologies.
Oh, thank you very much. And Miriam, do you have anything else to add on the competitive advantages that businesses can get from AI risk management and compliance?
Well, just to underscore everything Navrina said, I think it's such an important way to think about AI regulation, AI governance, internal regulation, internal governance, because we're talking about the sticks of regulation, but there's the advantages that if you are thoughtful about your AI governance, you grow your consumer base and you build your trust. So what more important is there than making sure that your AI is usable and safe? It works with a broader consumer base, and what better way to go to sleep at night knowing you're not harming people and you're not at risk for regulation. And again, I think it just can't be said enough that there's no time to wait. I think of this situation as very similar to cyber 15 years ago when people were advising us, you have to have a cybersecurity plan. There is a threat, and too many companies thought it was someone else's threat, didn't realize it was their own. That's where we are right now with AI. Most companies are using it in important ways in pivotal functions and don't realize the harm that they could be doing if they don't take action now.
Oh, great. And I guess, Miriam, that I've heard you talk before about the importance of risk management and something that we lawyers can help with. And what does a company need to be thinking? You're a former in-house counsel. What does a company need to be thinking about in terms of risk management, even beyond the context of regulation?
Thank you for talking about the lawyers, Peter. I mean, I know it's a passion that we have amongst ourselves and as well as with the Athens Roundtable. Lawyers, first and foremost, need to understand that they can't ignore AI. Abstinence is not an option. You are probably using it at your firm and your clients are using it. I've heard too often that lawyers are waiting for the clients to bring this up. That's absolutely backwards. We all know that's not how the practice of law works. We help them realize where they have harms and risks. We help them establish frameworks to mitigate. And if you're afraid that you cannot speak AI, it's probably not this audience because you all are here today and curious about it. But for many of your colleagues, let them know it's okay. You don't know how to build a car, and yet you know how to ensure there's safety, that there's compliance. With computers, again, you can't build one, but you know how to understand the laws within your purview, within your geographical location, and help establish what are best practices. That's what needs to happen. That's what lawyers need to do with AI governance. We're fortunate that there are many frameworks out now. This is no longer early days. You heard from Elham Tabasi with the really impressive AI risk management framework they're putting together. I think lawyers should start there. Is not dependent on which country you're based out of, as it should not be, because we are all a part of the AI global fabric. And likewise, there's the Bill of Rights that can give you best practices. Many companies have given deep thought to this in other countries. There are 62 countries that have AI principles in place. So no shortage of places to look, and you'll find a lot of overlap amongst them.
I think that's absolutely right. And one thing that I would add on top of that is that the way, basically, for those, I assume everybody in the audience knows this, but for those who don't, AI makes predictions, or machine learning makes predictions, and they come with a specified probability of being correct. The inverse of that is there's a specified probability of being incorrect. And so leaving aside a regulatory context, that if you have an incorrect answer that's important enough in a business-to-business transaction or in a business-to-consumer transaction, that at least in the United States, you've bought yourself a lawsuit. And so I think, Miriam, what you've just been talking about in terms of the risk management for lawyers goes well beyond the regulatory context. Another thing I just want to pick up on what you had said earlier is that I think somebody at the company really does need to be owning the AI risk management function, whether it's regulatory or litigation. That this can differ whether it's a big or a small organization. But the board or the C-suite, if it's a large enough company, really does need to, or does have a responsibility here. Navrina, I'd like to turn to you now about some thoughts about what we can do to be mitigating risks and how codes of conduct and other governance or compliance tools will help. What sort of oversight do you think is required here?
Absolutely. And Peter, before I go into that, I do want to emphasize something, that the progress in artificial intelligence has been astounding. You made a statement that AI does predictions. Actually, no longer. It actually generates new kinds of AI. So we need to, a topic that was discussed in a panel a few minutes back was around this generative AI. So as we start thinking about new AI capabilities and how they are exponentially increasing, it becomes even more important for us to hold ourselves accountable and establish the right oversight functions to manage things like generative AI. So just wanted to point that out. I think it's gone beyond prediction a while back. In terms of oversight and accountability, I think this again goes back to, it's great to have all the frameworks. We have about 2,000 of them across the world now, but there is a true pain point in actually operationalizing these principles. And I want to highlight three, and then I would love to go into what companies need to do. So three pain points that companies are facing right now is, first and foremost, incentive misalignment. Miriam spoke about lawyers and the role lawyers play. If you sort of extend that to policymakers and compliance people and risk managers, and how do you actually bridge the gap with the technical stakeholders, there's a massive oversight deficit. And more importantly, there's different incentives for a technical stakeholder versus a business stakeholder. So as companies are thinking about what they can do to operationalize, they absolutely need to put in place incentive structures at the top, so that it's not just about managing a lawsuit or being compliant to regulation, but actually doing the right thing for their consumers, doing the right thing for the company. And I think that will take a lot of time. The second thing, which is really critical, is really thinking about access to right data sets and tools. So, this is an ongoing discussion, even with EU AI Act, when you think about conformity assessments, the need for compliant data for testing and for auditing is really critical. But the question then begs is, do you also have the tool infrastructure to bring these oversight functions to bear? And then lastly, I can't underscore the need for having clear organizational accountability structures. And what I mean by that is, right now, even for the AI first companies, if you go and ask who's responsible for looking at these unintended consequences of AI, there are like fingers getting pointed all over the place because there's not one accountable individual. So a role of a chief AI officer and having the right accountability structures within the enterprise, who's going to be held accountable for managing risk, but over a long time building that trust with AI, is going to be critical.
Yes, and to pick up on that, I think one reason why it's going to be really important for folks at the top to be paying attention to this is at least the U.S. Federal Trade Commission recently, in a cybersecurity settlement, imposed liability or on the CEO of the organization, and I would expect that we're going to see this going forward for violations of FTC, of the FTC Act, unfair practices or deceptive practices with respect to AI organizations as well, or AI mistakes or violations. And in particular, this is going to be following this CEO into future jobs. So it's not just attached to this organization. So it's going to be critical for organizations to be paying attention to this going forward. And I guess I'd like to drill a little bit more about Miriam. Put your in-house counsel's hat on, right? Right now, you're an evangelist for good AI practices, but somebody brings to you a question saying, all right, now what? You telling me I need to comply with AI. How do I manage this?
Well, I would say thank you very much for coming to me with that question. I would say, first and foremost, let's talk about what is good AI hygiene. I think, it's a term I like to use. I hope it becomes more common because it's something we all need to implement. And it can be defined in different ways, but I think if you look across the many best practices and frameworks, there are 5 that we talk about in our badge program to train senior executives on best practices, and that we also include in our continual legal education, our CLE for lawyers. And again, these are best practices across legal frameworks, no matter your country of origin or where your global company operates. So first of all, you have to have a plan for a framework. As I mentioned earlier, and as we've heard from other speakers, there are numerous really effective frameworks out there that have taken into account global standards and best practices. And we have had some time now to study the impact. So you pick that, you bring it to your senior leadership. Your senior leadership has to buy in. There's no shortcut around that. We talked about accountability. If you don't have senior level buy-in, it'll be too hard to make the tough choices. It'll be too hard to understand what the process is and make sure that it is endorsed at the highest levels. And so I like to come to a company and use the excuse of for Equal AI to bring this conversation, or another organization entity to make you come together to talk about AI. Too often it's thought of as the IT guy in the corner that handles AI. We need to modernize our thinking and realize that AI is a part of all of our practices. There has to be alignment at the senior level. And by the way, your board is going to start asking about it, so you want to get ahead of that. So have a meeting. Include your general counsel. We're too often brought in too late when there's a problem to fix, and we can be much less useful then. You want to bring them in as your partner. You want to have them help you advise from the beginning what is compliant, what's problematic, and make them a partner in this effort. You want to make sure that your HR team is in there because they're probably using AI, your innovation team. And then you want to look at where you're using AI, where you're going to be using AI, and decide what's our policy going to be, what's our practice. Are you going to have an internal ethics council? Are you going to have an outside council that weighs in? I would say the best practice we've seen is making sure that you have people close to the product creation. If you are an AI creator or that have access to the procurement process so that you can be in the front lines and you're aligned on what's happening. But you want to make sure after you've decided on what this process is that you document. You want to document what your process is. You want to document what you're testing for AI and when. So you want to make sure that you have a routine cadence based on what your AI system is, how high stakes it is, how quickly it's iterating, which is, probably it's lightning speed, but how fast new patterns are going to be emerging that you want to be getting ahead of. You want to make sure that you have a process throughout the human AI touch points of your AI lifecycle. So that means from the design phase, the development, the training, the testing, And again, it'll be iterating. So make sure that each of these touch points are accounted for, and that there's again, clear accountability. Who does someone reach out to if there's a problem? There's going to be a problem. There's going to be new patterns. So you want to make sure that your process is very clear. And again, if there's sign off from your senior leadership, someone knows that they are safe to bring that up. They won't be challenged or get in trouble for bringing up a problem, that it is welcome. And then you want to bring that to the public. The best part about doing this work is that, we talked about the consumer advantage. As Navrina touched on, the exciting piece here is you're building trust. You're building trust inside your organization. You're building trust with your consumer base. And then you'll want to make sure to continue to audit this going forward, given the continued iteration patterns of AI.
And Miriam, you made the point about a bunch of different actors, or a bunch of different AI systems often being within a company. And I think that you don't need to tackle them all at once, that you take you do risk assessments and you figure out which ones are going to be the ones that are going to be presenting the highest level of risks, and triage by the danger of the potential harms or the potential results of the AI systems. And for risky systems, then you obtain a comprehensive understanding, identifying those risks presented, particularly in the United States with respect to discrimination, and work on mitigating them. And Navrina, I think that Credo here can explain a little bit about how one goes about mitigating those systems.
Absolutely, Peter. So a little bit context for the audience. At Credo AI, we've built a software platform, which is an AI governance platform that sits on top of your technical infrastructure. And it is able to do two things really well. One is bring in contextual alignment. So something that Miriam was mentioning is so critical, that you don't have to think about risk management and governance when the system's already built. How do you do that at the onset when you're thinking about an AI application? Should you even be using artificial intelligence or machine learning for it or not, is really critical. So how do you pull in AI governance early on in your application design is really important. But the second thing which is really important is alignment. Right now, frameworks, again, are great, but the problem is frameworks lack context, frameworks lack metrics, frameworks lack measurements. And this is why, work being done at NIST is so critical, because if you think about what does good look like for measuring the effectiveness of a facial recognition system versus measuring the effectiveness of a credit underwriting system, very different. So how can we expect all these different stakeholders to measure something when they don't even know what that good looks like? So within Credo, what we've done is we've really brought in not only that alignment, but codifying what exists either within company policies, codifying what's existing in either emerging standards or existing standards, codifying what's there in upcoming regulations or existing regulations, and really contextualizing it per use case. And once you have that context and once you know what good looks like for that particular application, then it really boils down to, one, are your technical systems, your data sets and models within the boundaries of what you've defined as good? Two, whether your accountability structures, the processes, the review methodologies, the human in the loop oversight, are they in accordance with your, the codified values? And then lastly, when you've done all that, how do you actually make it understandable for different stakeholders? One of the things that gets missed very often is a mechanism for redress and feedback from consumers who are going to be impacted. So within Credo AI, we are creating these governance artifacts that companies can use to either publicly disclose or disclose it to their customers, but providing them a mechanism so that you can also get feedback from customers. So I think I keep going back to, we are at this, we've, as Miriam was mentioning, we've already sort of passed the stage of frameworks and high-level thinking and principles. Now we are at this operationalization phase where it is all about how do you measure against what you've defined as what good looks like, and then over time with the regulations that are coming.
Thank you, Navrina. And since Nico is here to tell us that time's up, I'm just going to quickly share the results of the poll and then hand it back. So our top ranked answer with 37% was that you should start building an AI risk management compliance program because it facilitates corporate governance and managerial oversight. Next, with 34%, is because it's the right thing to do. Third, with 21%, is because it reduces litigation and regulatory enforcement risk. And 8% of folks think it's because it offers a competitive advantage in sales. And I'm going to cheat and say I would have picked option E, all of the above. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful discussion.
Well, thanks a lot, Peter, Navrina, and Miriam. Really, indeed, a great conversation. Very practical, very practice-oriented to really support the transition towards responsible AI in companies. And we know that without them, without these transitions, not much will happen. It won't suffice, but it's extremely important besides legislation. So thank you so very much for being with us today.